Well, good morning. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you so much for joining us here for our worship service on this day. We are so glad that you would spend your weekend with us, worshiping Jesus and tuning in wherever you're at. Now, maybe you're watching on your phone, or maybe you're watching at home, or maybe you're watching on your computer. However you're watching, we just want to let you know that it's great that you've chosen to join us, and you're always, always welcome. We would actually love to hear a little bit about where you're watching from, or who's watching today. So if you would connect with us, here's our connect number. It's 810-226-9979. And it's a special text number that you could use to text us and get some information from us. You can text check in to that number, and that will allow you to get some information about the service today, and also information about who we are as a church, and maybe some other ways that you could get connected. If you have a giving need and you want to support our ministry, we would love for you to do that. You can text give to the same number, and that'll give you a way to give financially to us. Now, if you want to make an end of the year donation, we would definitely appreciate that. It will help our ministries immensely. All those, if you want that ministry to apply to 2020, obviously it needs to come in before the end of 2020. You guys know the drill. So just before the end of the year, you can make that gift to us. We are very, very grateful for you to do that. And then if you have a care need, maybe there's something going on in your life, maybe God is you're wondering where God is, or you have some questions, or you just need some prayer, or maybe you just need some help or someone to talk to, we would love to be that person for you. You can text CARE to 810-226-9979, and you will respond with a little form to fill out. We'll get that form, and we'll respond back to you as quickly as we can. There's a lot going on in our church. We're excited about the new year. We're excited about meeting back in our building. That's going to happen in January. You'll get some more information for that soon, and we hope that you had just a great Christmas. I know I did, and I know the rest of the staff did. We are so thankful for all that you're doing to help support our church, and all the gifts that you have given all the staff and all of them. It's just really, really great. I'm going to take just a moment and pray for you and give a blessing over you, but I did want to just introduce what's going to happen today. Pastor Emma Delacourt will be sharing a special message tailored just for you today. You're not going to want to miss that. She'll come up shortly. We have our worship band here today. They're going to do some great things in just a moment, and then just right after the prayer, you're going to hear from Jen Johnson, our Director of Early Childhood, with a special message tailored just for kids. So kids, tune in. Let me pray for you. Father, we love you, and we thank you for this opportunity to gather today. And we pray that you would meet us as we meet and gather around our screens today. I know it's a little strange. I know it may not feel like church, but we know that when the body of your body gets together, these people get together, we form the church. And we form with this idea of looking towards you today. Father, there's a lot of distractions in our world. There's a lot of busyness in our world. There's a lot of things that pull our attention. But we make that conscious effort this morning to gather in specifically with what you would have for us today. We turn our eyes to you. We pick our eyes up and focus them in on you. We worship you. We pray to you. And we put our hearts into the hands that created them. Father, we love you and we thank you. And I pray a special blessing over anyone who needs that special touch today. I pray that you would meet them wherever they're at in the name of Jesus. Well, thank you again for being with us today. It means a lot to us. Jen, why don't you take it away?
Everybody, hope you had a Merry Christmas. We're so excited to be gathering this last time before the new year that we're all hoping goes smooth and well for everybody. And today we're going to be talking about doubt. And Pastor Emma is doing the service this morning. And so I want you to focus in on that word doubt. And what doubt means is you're not sure about something, or you're uncertain. And I remember as a child, most of the time that I felt doubt was when I was scared. And so I want to introduce you to some food I found in my pantry that they can actually show us how doubt works too. So I have my doubting cranberries, and it's Christmas food. That's part of the reason why I picked it. And I have my trusting cranberries over here. You'll notice they look a little bit different. These are brightly colored, and these are kind of shriveled up. So when we put the doubting cranberries in our liquid, at first they sink, and then they start to think about, well, maybe it's okay, maybe I'm safe, and then they float. But then they start to get worried again. I'll put a few more in there so you can see. Then they start to get worried again, and they sink. And then they, oh, maybe it's okay, and they float. And then they get worried again, and they keep sinking. This sounds like a horrible way to do anything. It's confusing, it's not predictable, you have no idea what's going to happen next, and you're constantly second-guessing yourself. Life is a whole lot easier when we are trusting. So here are my trusting cranberries. I put them in. They float right away. They continue to float. Their only job is to float. And this reminds me of a story in the Bible that happens in Matthew 14. If you want to look it up with your family and read it later, it's one of my favorites. Peter is on a ship when a huge storm comes up, and the wind is whistling, and the water is spraying him in the face, and all the disciples are really afraid. But Peter sees this shadow coming towards him on the water, and Jesus is walking on the water toward the boat. And Peter says, Jesus, if that's really you, invite me out there. And Jesus says, okay, come on out. And remember, the storm is swirling all around him, and Peter steps out onto the water towards Jesus and starts walking. But then he remembers, I'm in the middle of a storm, and this is really scary. And he takes his eyes off Jesus, and just like our doubting cranberries, he sinks, and Jesus helps him come back up to the top. If Peter just would have trusted in Jesus the whole time and not taken his eyes off of him, that experience would have been one of encouragement and fulfillment. But instead, it ended up being a time when we see real fear and real doubt and real almost humanness of Peter, because he wasn't able to just trust that Jesus would take care of him in that difficult moment. And I think sometimes I'm a lot like these doubting cranberries. And maybe you can think of a time that you are too. But in this new year, what a perfect time for us to work on being more like the trusting cranberries. We keep our eyes on Jesus. He keeps us walking on water or through whatever difficult thing we have to do. And we make it through totally happy and colorful and bright because we never took our eyes off him. Hope you have a happy New Year celebration. See you next time.
Good morning, church. Glad you're here to join us. Let's go ahead and worship together. He became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become his righteousness. He humbled himself, carried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from hell.
Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all our hope is in you, all our hope is in you, all the glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all.
Yes, a child is born. He shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world given for us. Noel. Son of God and Son of Man, there before the world began, born to suffer, born to save, born to raise us from the grave. Christ the everlasting Lord, He shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma, and I'm the pastor of Family Ministries, and I'm so happy to be with you today. I hope you had a really Merry Christmas. Today, I'm going to get right into it. So I read a Brady Shearer article, and it talked about the church today. And it talked about attending church used to be a way of life for most Americans, but we've had this huge communication shift in the past 500 years, and church has become less of a priority with Christians, especially under 40. And there's these facts here that say only 2 in 10 millennials believe church attendance is important. 59 of millennials who grew up in church have dropped out. If present trends continue, the percentage of the population in 2050 that attend church will be 11.7% compared to the 20.4% in the 1990s attendance. So basically, here's the sad truth. Most people don't care about church anymore. So Merry Christmas, people don't care about church. Well, there are people who are really, really passionate about church. There are people who've been hurt by the church, bitter by the church, angry towards the church, but mostly people are just apathetic. And Brady Shearer talks about why this is and how basically the church needs to find a way to connect culture to bring people to Jesus. And I get that and I love that, but I think also a big thing that we need to do is just talk about our issues, talk about what we're thinking, talk about our problems. I think it's first important to talk about that, how we're feeling, how we have questions, how we have fears, how we have doubts, how your pastors are feeling it too, so that we can come together and work out that stuff. I think it's important to talk about that. So, as many of you know, I graduated in 2017 from Anderson University, and I actually worked at Disney for a year. And for me, that was so fun because I love roller coasters. Now, my husband does not love roller coasters, which is hard for me, but I really do. And so there's this roller coaster at Universal or Orlando, and it goes straight up. And I remember riding it for the first time, being so excited. I look over at my friend, and he goes, "I can't do this," and lets out the highest pitched scream I have ever heard. Because when you go straight up, what happens after that? You go straight down. So you go up, and then you go down. So for me, I loved the drops. I had another friend, her name is Colleen, and she came to Disney hating roller coasters because she didn't like the drop. And so there's this ride, Frozen, and it's a boat ride, and there's this little drop in it, and I love this drop. I mean, it's not a lot to me, but she was scared, but she was determined to do this drop. And so here's a picture of us on this ride and how we felt about it. So as you can see, I'm smiling, I'm so excited. It's fun for me, and she is bracing herself. This is a big drop for her. And I love this picture so much just because it shows such a comparison. And so what this shows is we, this year, have had a lot of lows. We've had highs and we've had lows. The higher high you have, the lower low you can have. And it looks different for a lot of people. For some people, when they're having a low, you can't even tell. For some people, they don't want to come out of their bed. But it looks different for everyone, but that doesn't mean that everyone isn't having lows. This is a really hard time. We just had a big high with Christmas. I love Christmas. We decorated, I think, on November 1st because we were just so excited to have this high finally. But after a high comes that drop, comes that low. And with lows come fear, anxiety, depression, loneliness, all of these feelings, all of these lows. And as a church, we need to start talking about those lows. We need to talk about that to bridge the church and culture together. And so I want to talk about one of those lows today. And though that low is doubt. We don't always talk about doubt because when we think of doubt, we think that if we have it, we have a lack of faith. And that's not the case. So doubt and questions on doubt. I I've always been someone who's loved asking questions. My dad tells me when I was little during movies, I would not stop asking questions. Why did she drop her slipper? Why is she running away from the prince? Why is the prince following her? Why does he have her slipper? I just ask question after question. I still do it today. I just talk through movies because I love to question why the producers chose to do something. I love to be devil's advocate. So I have some questions for you guys today. Here are the questions. 1, have you ever been told not to ask so many questions? Right here. 2, maybe you felt annoying or guilty for asking questions, especially when it comes to your faith. On a scale from 1 to 10, how often do you have questions or doubts about God? I'm going to ask that one again. On a scale from 1 to 10, how often do you have questions or doubts about God? Are you able to share your questions with anyone? And if not, what is preventing you from doing so? Well, I did say earlier that for some of us, we don't want to share because it looks like we have a lack of faith. It looks like we don't believe in God. And I actually want to talk today about how that's not necessarily the case. And I want to first talk about how we are not alone in our doubt. Our doubts look different, just like the drops that I talked about with the roller coaster, how people handle them. Our doubts look different, but we all have them. We're all in this together. And I want to talk about that. All over the Bible, there are people who have doubts. Gideon had to doubted God 5 times before he finally got convinced with what God was doing. So I want to look around the Bible and look at some times where people felt doubts. And I want to first look at Psalm 88. And this is written by Haman the Ezrahite. And so what this says is, my eyes are dim with grief. I call to you, Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you. Do you show your wonders to the dead? Do their spirits rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the place of darkness? Are your righteousness deeds in the land of oblivion? But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayers come before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? And so these verses, he's not in a good place. He is asking God why he's rejecting him. He's kind of blaming God a little bit. He's questioning God. So I want to look at another psalm, Psalm 22, and this one is written by King David. It says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And I actually want to point something out at first. It's a little bit of a tangent. But do you guys recognize this first line? This is what Jesus says when he's about to die. Basically saying something that King David wrote, showing people that he is the second David, he is the second coming. And so David wrote this while he was having doubt. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you, our ancestors put their trust. They trusted you, and you delivered them. To you, they cried out and were saved. In you, they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults at me, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Now here, David is having doubts too, but he is trying to talk to God about how God can be trusted. God can be trusted in this time. And these are 2 different ways to come about doubt. They're different, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the same impact. Doubts and questions take many forms. So when our questions don't look like someone else's, we start to doubt we're doing what God called us to do, and we get confused. If we don't have the same question as someone, or they have better questions, or we're thinking something that we don't think anyone else is thinking, we get confused, and we think that our doubt is different than everyone else's. But know that doubt can take many different forms. It can be because of pain. It can be you're working through things, thinking, venting, trying to find answers, asking the hard questions. Know that just because your doubt is different from someone else's, we are still not alone in our doubt. The next thing I want to focus on is we don't always get our questions answered. And that's what faith is. And I know that's kind of like a churchy answer, but that's what it is. We don't always get everything answered. How many of us, I have a question for you, how many of us have felt doubt because we asked for something and God did not give it to us? I have a follow-up question. Did you end up with something better? And by better, I don't mean you ended up richer or exactly where you wanted to be or everything fit into place. But do you end up with something that you feel like glorifies God the best? Did you end up with something better? So about when I first came to Davison, I was transitioning from Indianapolis, and I love going new places. I loved moving new places, but whenever I go somewhere, I have a hard transition time of about 3 weeks. I don't know why, it just always happens. And I remember about 3 weeks into being here, I felt so welcomed. I loved the church, but I remember sitting by myself at nighttime, just being like, God, why did you bring me here to be sitting here alone while my friends were all in Indianapolis, my family, my niece, and here I am just like arguing with you. And I started to doubt why God brought me here. I started to have fear. And about a week later is when I met my husband, and now I have never felt like I'm meant to be somewhere more. And so we have these questions, we have these doubts, but usually God ends up knowing what is best. So this is a really hard time, and I have not heard of anyone who is like, God is moving so much in my life. I've heard so much from God. He's giving me every single answer. God is totally directing me in everything I do. It's hard. I've had lots of questions and doubts because I'm like, God, why would you bring us in here? I feel like this is a good time to mold and change the church to what it needs to be. But you're not giving us any direction. I feel like you're silent. And, that could be that he's wanting us to wait, but it's caused me to have doubts, and I want answers to my questions. Now, there is a guy in the Bible who also wanted answers to his questions, and his name is Job. And Job basically had a lot of disastrous things happen to him. And that's basically because God and Satan were testing him. And so he runs to his friends for answers. And his friends basically say, well, maybe your family deserved it. Maybe you did something bad. You just got to be thankful. You got to trust God in his plan. You deserve it, basically. First of all, okay. Second of all, he ran to his friends for answers. So he finally runs to God, cries out to him in pain, and demands an answer. He demands to have an encounter with God. And God doesn't necessarily give him the answer he wants, but he does answer him. And this Bible Project video shows exactly what he says.
He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogue, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person, and God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts. and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
So, as you can see, God did not give Job the answer he was looking for, but Job still had an encounter with God. And that is what this is all about. He has questions. Some could say he has doubts. But in pursuing that, in pursuing figuring out his questions and his doubts, he ended up having a great encounter with God. His questions weren't answered, but he pursued God and had an encounter with him. So I have a second part to my question that I asked you a little bit ago. I asked, how many of us have felt doubt because we asked for something that God didn't give to us? Well, here is my second part to that question. Did you actually take the time to see and listen to why God wasn't giving you exactly what you wanted? So again, how many of us have felt doubt because we asked for something and God didn't give it to us? But did you actually take the time to see and listen to why God wasn't giving you exactly what you wanted? So often we have questions, we have doubt, but we don't seek the encounter with God. So when I was planning on coming to this church, I still wasn't 100% sure. And I went to go talk with one of my mentors about whether or not to take this job. And we ended up talking about college. We ended up talking about people with faith in their early 20s. And what happens is when you grow up in the church, you grow this metaphorical house, basically, on your parents' faith, on what your church tells you. And it's, let's say, because it's still kind of Christmas time, it's a gingerbread house with glued together. So you grow up, you go away from home, and you get your faith challenged, you get your faith questioned, and you try to figure out what you believe. Well, basically, that glue holding your house, your gingerbread house together dissolves. And so it leaves you with gingerbread just broken and not put together. And so what happens is a lot of people see this, they get overwhelmed, and they leave the church. They don't want to put it back together. They want it exactly the way it was before, but that's not going to happen. So they get overwhelmed and they leave the church. But what we need to do as Christ followers is we have to put in the work to find new glue. We have to find glue to put it back together. And that's going to take work. It takes research. It takes talking to people. But we have to glue that gingerbread house back together with new glue. And sometimes we don't want to do that. So it just leaves us in confusion and doubt. And we don't do anything about it. So we talked about how we aren't alone in our doubt. We have questions, but if we don't take the time to work out these questions, we're going to get confused and lost. Did you do research? Did you talk to someone else? We won't always have our questions answered, but in pursuing and doing the work to pursue God, you will have encounters with God that will change you. Doubt can help us grow with God, grow closer to God if we allow it. That is my third point. Doubt can help us grow closer to God. My final Bible story is in Matthew 14 and is about Jesus walking on water. We all know this story. It's pretty common, but we're going to read it together to see what happens to Peter. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind had died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." And so what happens in this story is Peter does pursue God, does pursue Jesus to have that encounter, but he gets scared, there's fear, and this time right now, we have a lot of fear. We have a lot to be scared of. We have a lot to be annoyed about. We have a lot to be bitter about. We have a lot that can distract us from pursuing God. And when we get distracted in that doubt, what happens? We begin to sink. When we get distracted, when we let that fear and that doubt take over without pursuing God, we start to sink. And God can grab us. God can bring us back like he did with Peter. But we need to continue to pursue God and do the work in that. Questions don't show you are drifting apart from God. They show you care and actually help deepen your faith. Because when you do get this question answered, you have more ways to defend your faith and understand your faith. When it does not get answered, you still had an encounter with God. They're not a sign you're questioning your faith, but deepening your faith, and challenging your faith actually helps grow your faith. God is moving, but we need to be moving too. We can't just sit in our doubt and questions, but we need to pursue encounters with God. So I had an encounter with God recently, and it did bring some doubt, but it actually did deepen my faith with God. We did the Giving Tree recently, which was amazing, and you all gave so generously, and I want to thank you for that. And we had an extra family come to us and say, "We really need help." And at the moment, we already had 6 families. We weren't sure how we were going to do, so we gave them a gift card. But I prayed to God, and I said, "God, how amazing would it be if this family, if we took all of the Giving Tree stuff and used it up, and then we could also help this family? How it would show your glory to this family." And I prayed and prayed, and I wasn't hearing anything. And then just a week and a half ago, someone reached out and said, "I want to take a whole entire family." I said, "Well, we have this family here, but it's 6 kids and they all want Legos." And this lady was like, "I will take this family." And it was amazing because we got to reach out to this family and God provided. And so we ended up, the girls of this family really wanted this special Barbie toy. And we couldn't find it anywhere, so we got them something else. But we thought, how special would it be if we got this Barbie toy? And we went to, I think, 8 different stores trying to find this thing, and we could not find it. And I remember driving in the car at 12:30 in the morning going, "God, why would you give us this family? Why would you put this in my heart that I want to do more?" And then just desert us and not help us. We're not finding this toy. I just felt like I wanted to do more. But that doubt and that fear started creeping in. And the next day we actually found one, but it was on Facebook Marketplace, and it was a little bit more. But right at that very moment, we had someone reach out from the church and say, "Hey, I forgot and I want to give to the Giving Tree. Here's this money." And I said, "Can I use it for this?" And they said, "Absolutely." And she said, "I just felt like God reminded me that I need to give." And it was right at that very moment we were able to get the toy. We gave it to the family. They were so thankful. And this just shows God coming through over and over again, pursuing that encounter with God and your faith changing. And these encounters with God is what faith is about. It's what what answers our doubts. Because when you have an encounter with God, you can't deny him. You can't deny that he's moving in your life. It answers those doubts that you have. And so that's what this is about. We're not alone in our doubt. We won't always have questions answered, but when we pursue God and pursue those encounters with God, when we do the work to get those questions answered, to talk to others about how we're feeling, doubt can help us grow closer to God. And so we've had a high, we're going into a low, but we can remember to get moving and pursue God in that low. Just because we're in a low doesn't mean we need to stop pursuing God. Faith isn't about uncritically listening and accepting what someone tells you. Faith is continuing to search for God in the midst of our questions. So my challenge to you is, yes, we have questions. Yes, we have doubt, but continue to search for God in the midst of your questions. We're going to pray. Pray with me. Lord, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for a healthy and safe Christmas. Thank you that you have delivered us through this time, that you're in control, that you know what's going on. We have questions. We have doubt. We sometimes feel alone, but you are always with us. You know exactly what you're doing, and you are in control. Thank you for always knowing what's best for us, even when we want those questions answered. We want a specific thing. You know what's best for us. And I pray that we will continue to surrender to you, continue to be open to what you have to us, and continue to have the strength to pursue you and those encounters with you. Thank you for who you are, and I continue to pray for safety and health during this time. Thank you so much for joining us. We will have more information for you on January and when we're opening, but thank you so much for these past couple weeks and joining us together. I pray that you guys have a safe and happy New Year.